are now starting our lab. You have the copy of the paper, probably an electronic copy of this. And so we're going to follow the procedure here, just as if you were doing the lab. Of course, I'm going to put my PPE on. I need to see, so I'm using the full face shield today. Okay, so we are going to, first of all, measure out the correct mass of the copper-2 chloride dihydrate. Now you'll notice that you can't see the numbers down here off the screen, and there's a reason for that, obviously, because that you need to calculate in your pre-labs, and we're going to add twice as much as what we're supposed to calculate. A little more than okay, so there's the correct amount. Now we also need to add 1 gram of the steel wool. So 0 that. And what we're going to do is pull this stuff apart. Wow, that was pretty good. Just a wee bit too much. No, just a wee bit, not enough. Oh, come on, really? There we go. 1 gram, right on. I think I'm breathing on it. Okay, I'm going to take this one to B strand. There we go. So at this point, what we want to do, before we pour our material into the containers, we need to because afterwards because some of the material is going to be impregnated into this. In order to figure out exactly how much material we've got, we are going to need the mass of this thing to start with. So let me just re-zero this. And our overall mass for the filter paper, 1.44 grams. The first thing that we need to do is, since we've already measured out our materials, we have the right amount of the copper-2 chloride, we have the 1.00 grams of iron from the steel wool. And so now the first thing we have to do is take our 150 ml beaker, and I'm going to add about 50 or 60 milliliters of water. So that's that one. And then we're going to dissolve the copper-2 chloride into the beaker. So that's going in there. And stir that around. You'll notice that depending on how much is dissolved, it either turns a nice green color or a nice blue color. And so once that's dissolved, as it is now, that's going to be our excess solution, okay? So the next thing then is that I'm going to have to carry out the chemical reaction. And this is actually fairly straightforward. All we're going to do is put the 1.00 grams of steel wool into my container and watch the reaction go. So I'm going to bring this a little closer so you can actually see it. And if you look carefully, you can see there is already a little bit of brown color on the steel wool, and that is the copper forming. Oops, put this back over here. And we'll stir that around until all of the copper has formed and all of the steel wool has been converted to iron 2+ ion. Doesn't take very long. Now, a couple of things that you might have noticed. Sir, the beaker's warm. Is it supposed to do that? Yeah, it's supposed to do that. And as you see the reaction progressing, I'm just going to let that sit now and settle out. I'll bring the, you'll notice that we still have a greenish tinge to the beaker, but paper behind that. You can see the color, a little bit on the green side. And that's good because we still have some of the copper 2+ ions in there, and that's just fine. Okay. Roll that around a few more times. Now, the next thing we have to do is filter this mess. Okay, so this is going to now get filtered to recover the copper. And so we're going to use our filter paper. And so the way this works, we fold that in half. We fold that in half again. We take 3 sides on one side on the other to make the cone. And that goes into the funnel. All right, what I like to do now at this point, you can see it sort of wants to unfold itself. And so I usually just wet the filter paper, and that way it sticks to the sides of the funnel and will hold its shape a little better. All right, so the next thing then we're going to do, there's 2 methods of separating the solid from the liquid. You can either decant or you can filter, and actually we're going to do both just so that you've seen them. The first one is decanting, and for decanting what you do is you let the solid precipitate settle out to the bottom. And for this technique, what you do is you rest your glass rod on the top like this, and then you pour the solution into your container. And so very gently pouring off the liquid without losing any of the solid. Now I'm doing this into my filter paper because I want to be able to actually retrieve as much as possible. Now the problem with this is that if it's a small powdered solid precipitate rather than a kind of a gel precipitate that it adheres to itself and sticks together, the small bits quite often get lost in this process. And so you have a tendency to lose some material that way. So that's decanting. I'll pour a little bit more on. And so now what we've got, and you can see this quite well, we've got that copper, I'll bring this closer to the camera, we've got that copper sitting there at the bottom of the beaker with some of the liquid. It's definitely that brown copper color. Again, I'll show you the white background. Hopefully you can see that in the video. All right. Okay, so that's, I'm going to let that pour out. The other thing that you'll notice, and I'll bring the camera a little bit closer here so that you can actually see. The other thing that you can see, if you're looking into the funnel, is you can see some of the brown material on the inside of the funnel, and that's already some of the copper bits that were in the decanted solution. So we've already poured out a little bit of that material. And if all you were doing is decanting, you would find usually a fair loss of material. Okay, so there's a better view of the copper material. Okay. So I've let some of the stuff run down, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wash out the remaining copper from my beaker. And so that's just going to get poured straight into there. Rinse out as much of the copper as possible. Last rinse. All the wee little bits there. Alright. And we'll just let that drain out. Alright, so everything has been drained through now, and so we are at the point now where I'm going to just lay out my, I'm going to lay out my material now in order to dry, okay? So we'll just unravel that, and we'll let that dry overnight. And okay, so we've let this all dry out overnight, and we've recovered our material here. Give you a bit of a close-up of this. All right, so there's our copper. Some of it's kind of filled out into a little bit of a cone. And so what we want to do now is we're going to weigh this out. And so again, remembering our mass from the filter paper from yesterday. Okay, so that's zeroed. Set that on there. And we have a total mass of 3.59 grams. Okay, 3.59 grams.